Okay. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to acknowledge the points made by councillors, and if we might, Chair, we might focus on the maybe the current applications first. I'm conscious the sliding scale is a big issue in relation to the new scheme, but if we maybe focus on the current scheme and the applications, and we'll acknowledge the comments of members and phone calls as well from members in relation to delays in getting decisions made, and we'll certainly clarify that. John will have a presentation here to clarify that the rationale behind that and the challenges at the minute, and I think it'll help clarify a lot of issues that members have raised, and indeed would agree with a lot of the issues that members have raised. So, John, maybe I would hand it over to yourself, maybe to go through your points, please.
Yeah, thanks, Patsy. Thanks, Chairman. Siobhan's just sharing the screen with me here now, so I'll bring up a document to our members, just to give an overview. Is everybody able to see that, members? Yeah. So yeah, this is just an update on the current.
Can't see the screen yet. Or John, sorry, can't see the screen.
Nothing there, Martin. No.
No.
Still nothing up there, Chairman? No.
No. Siobhan, can you share your screen if John sent it to you? Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah. Thanks. Everybody able to see that, members?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Just the update on the current effective concrete block scheme. Siobhan, can you move to the next slide? I don't have. Yeah. So, members, to the Galway County Council's role, we're currently administering the defective concrete block scheme as per SI 25/2020, which is the regulations 2020 on behalf of the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage. And these regulations require us, the Council is required to administer the scheme in accordance with the requirements of IS 465 2018 plus A1 2020. The local authority, having considered an application made under the regulations, may issue confirmation of eligibility, which is stage 1, to the applicant in respect of the relevant dwelling. The subject of the application, the local authority is satisfied that the engineer's report as submitted has been prepared in accordance with IS 465. So that's probably the ground rule, members. Just a quick overview of the ground rules for what we're authorised to do. Sorry, next one, Siobhan. The current statistics, members, the stage 1 applications, confirmation of eligibility, applications received is 596, applications approved is 370, applications awaiting further information are being assessed 225, 1 application withdrawn, stage 1 payments to date 362, and the value of the stage 1 payments is 1.7 million. Now, the stage 1 payments to date, members, that includes sampling, testing, geologist reports, laboratory reports, and chartered engineers reports. On to the next one, Siobhan, please. The stage 2 applications, Remember, stage 2 is the remedial works plan, which is the detail on the remedial works actually concerned and the costing and the contractor's quotation. 64 applications received, 38 decided stroke approved. The value of approvals is 5.6 million. There's 26 waiting further information or being assessed. And going on then to the stage 3 payments to date. Stage 3 projects on site, 35, and value of monies paid so far, 1.3 million. On to the next one, please, Siobhan. Analysis of the applications received so far, and bear in mind there's approximately 600 applications received. The highest number of applications received per month since the introduction of the defective concrete block scheme have been received in November 2021. 69 applications were received in November 21. 61 of these applications have been proposed by the chartered engineers for option 1, full demolition. So in November, just to highlight that, 61 out of the 69 applications in November, the chartered engineers are proposing option 1. The comparative analysis of applications received demonstrate that the request for option 1, i.e. demolition, has increased from 33% in June 2020 to 90% in November 21. So last year, June 2020, there was 33% for option 1, and the remainder would be the other options 2 to 5 or a combination thereof. That more recently has increased now up to 90% and indeed even higher. The next slide shows a bar chart represents the number of applications received per month from the commencement of the scheme in June 2020. In addition to all of this, we have had 74 change of circumstance requests relating to remedial option. These requests are predominantly for upgrading to option 1. Now, what those change of circumstance mean, members, is that these are applications and chartered engineers reports that have already been approved for stage 1, already been approved for eligible. They're all back in now looking for an upgrade to option 1. Many of them in the past, members would have had a variety of options 2, 3, 4, or a combination thereof. They're all now looking for a change of circumstance as well. Let's go on to the next one, Siobhan, please. That bar chart there, members, looks at the profile of applications received since June 2020. And you can see there are certain months there where the applications were higher. March 2021 was fairly high, and November 2021 probably the highest so far, as already mentioned. So there is quite a trend in increasing numbers of applications coming in under the existing scheme. And move on, Siobhan, to the next one now. The challenges in administering the scheme, the recent availability of substantial additional test data incorporating detailed petrographic examinations, SEM examinations for free mica content, cement content, sulphide content, compressive strength, obtained from samples on Donegal, has further enhanced the expertise and knowledge in the area. So with all the testing and sampling that's been done since June 2020, the collation and the learning from all of that there is substantial. In Donegal, the presence of the deleterious materials pyrite and pyrrhotite have been noted in the majority of samples, in addition to muscovite mica. Pyrrhotite is a highly reactive and unstable form of iron sulphide. It is susceptible to oxidation, resulting in expansion. Pyrrhotite alteration requires the presence of both moisture and oxygen. So whilst initially the focus was on a freeze thaw due to mica, it's quite clear now that the other sulphides that are present in the samples are showing a much more advanced thinking in terms of all of the sulphides, in addition to just muscovite mica. Chemical analysis for total sulphur varied from small percentages up to 0.7%. Again, total sulphur is a measure of all the sulphides present in the aggregate. The ISCN 12620, which is aggregates for concrete, and SR16, require total sulphur content to be less than 0.1%, where there's a presence of pyrite and pyrrhotite. So that's a small percentage there that you have to be under, and recognise the importance associated with the likes of pyrite and pyrrhotite if it's present. The potential risk of concrete block deterioration posed by the presence of pyrite and pyrrhotite exists. However, there's uncertainty regarding whether or not the pyrrhotite will alter, and research is required. So, for example, the pyrite and pyrrhotite can be evident in the petrographic assessment. The question is, has it altered? Is there a potential for it to alter and potentially deteriorate the block? Or has the alteration already occurred pre-manufacture of the block? Research is needed to establish that and to define that. If the inner leaf is exposed to moisture, the potential for pyrrhotite alteration exists. And your members will be aware where IS 465 talks about the inner leaf remaining dry and not deteriorating if it remains dry. But there's also the aspect of if the inner leaf contains pyrite or pyrrhotite and is exposed to moisture, there's a potential there for alteration and deterioration resulting from that. Go to the next one, please, Siobhan. The combined effect of mica, pyrite, pyrrhotite, wetting and drying, and leaching of cement in mica-rich blocks requires consideration in addition to freeze thaw. So it's a combination of all of these factors in addition to freeze thaw. The review or a review of IS 465 2018 plus A1 2020 in the context of the above. The outcome of the Geological Survey Ireland current research to improve the understanding of the effects of excessive amounts of pyrite and or muscovite mica in concrete blocks to reduce the level of unknown risks which may be present in structures affected by these deleterious materials. That research is ongoing presently. It was commissioned by the Geological Survey of Ireland earlier in the year, and that's ongoing. And the outcome of that research is going to be very important. The effect of full cavity insulation on moisture movement, in particular if the cavity is full of insulation and there's a potential for moisture to transverse the cavity from the external to the internal. And we spoke about the presence of the sulphides on the internal block. There's a potential there for deterioration. And also, and finally, the potential degradation due to wet and drying of mica-rich external and internal rising walls requires further consideration and research. So what that is there is that apart from freeze thaw, if you've got a mica-rich block, which is by nature spongy, there's a substantial potential there for moisture to fill all the voids in the block, and the continual wetting and drying could deteriorate the block even without any freeze thaw mechanism at all. So that mechanism there of degradation needs to be considered as well. And as part of the challenges, these last two slides is kind of a synopsis of the challenges that we have as engineers implementing the scheme. We'll just move on to The next slide now, please, Siobhan. So, conclusion: Donegal County Council acknowledge the development expertise that has and is evolving out of the implementation of the defective concrete block scheme. However, it is difficult to process many current applications on hand having regard to the issues outlined above, and applications continue to be received under the current scheme. The operational reality of trying to administer the current defective concrete block scheme from a technical administrative perspective in accordance with the requirements of IS 465 is now proven to be extremely difficult, because we're tasked to administer the scheme in accordance with IS 465. The Council has sought guidance and further advice from the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage on the matters raised above to assist us with the implementation of the current scheme, and particularly to enable us to make appropriate decisions on stage 1 applications and change of circumstance applications in the context of all of the technical challenges that we've gone through here. So, members, that's my, Patsy and Chairman, that's my presentation. Try to highlight there the technical challenges that we're dealing with as a council, and we're obliged to administer the current scheme in conjunction with IS 465. There's a lot of learning gained since 2018 in the context of everything that we're now aware of, and that is why we're saying that is making it very difficult to process applications on hand, and bearing in mind that above 90% of applications now are looking for option 1. Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, Patrick.
Ron, can you just hold down that screen for a second? Can we take off that, Ron, so that I can see everybody again? John. Thanks, John. I think Siobhan's going to try and bring that down. It's very hard to see everybody here when that's up on the screen. I think that's a very important slide there. And Siobhan, maybe that slide could be shared with the members here as well. I think it would be important that we have that slide there. It's a very comprehensive slide and gives a lot of information. I think, John, that as members and as councillors and as people that's being contacted on a daily basis, and every single one of us here are being contacted on a daily basis, and especially at the time of year that we're in, coming up to the Christmas period, with families that have been out vast amount of money for months and hoping that they would have their money back for Christmas, and clearly that's not going to be the case. And I think that we have to be very clear here, John, as a council, and I think it's very important that we're honest and truthful and straight with the general public here, because there's enough anxiety out there and enough pressures out there on people as we are at the minute, and we need to be clear as to where we stand. And if applications cannot be progressed because we are waiting on clarification from the department and guidance from the department as to what you can do and your team can do over the next month or 6 weeks, I think we need to let people know that. And I think it's important that the general public know that if that can't be done, if those applications that are in there cannot be proceeded to go on with, that the general public know that, and that we as a council make that clear. Because I don't think it's fair on us as elected members, and I don't think it's fair on your staff that are dealing with the general public on a daily basis if we don't be clear on where we're going here. And I think that's, if anything is achieved out of this meeting today, I think that would be a very, very worthwhile achievement, that people know for certainty as to where they stand. Because at the minute, my phone, and I'm sure everybody else, every councillor here's phone, is doing the exact same thing. People asking what's happening. People clear on where we're going, clear on what we're doing, and that the general public know that's where this sits at the moment. And, you know, if that is the case, that is the case, and we have to deal with that, and the department has to step up to the mark in relation to IS 465, in relation to what you've just explained to the members here today. But I want to thank you for that, John, because it gives a very clear indication. Now, there's a few people has put their hands up to speak. First, Paul Canning, seconds, Councillor McBrearty, and third is Councillor Jerry McMonagle. So, Councillor Canning.
Yeah, thanks, Martin, and thanks, John, for the comprehensive report there. And I have to agree with Martin. We need to get the word, be honest with the people out there and tell them and get it out there fair, sooner rather than later. The problem we have was, a lot of people don't think there's a problem, but the problem we have, the more knowledge that we have, the more responsibility we have, and the more liability we have. And we need to be very careful here as to how we go forward from here, because if we are aware and have knowledge that there's other items that's more or less been ignored to a certain degree within blocks, and we're still allowing buildings, etc., to continue without letting the people know what is going on, and a lot of stuff with the actual test results and the petrographic analysis of everything. We could be here in 10 years, 15 years time with the exact same problem. The only problem we have then is we were aware of it 15 years ago, so to speak. So we need to put a proper pathway in place, what direction we're going with all of this, because we're getting into very tricky ground insofar as moving forward from here. I know we have the issues with the whole Mica thing, but every other item that's coming within them tests, we're all aware of at this stage. And, have we anybody looking at it, doing analysis on that? Is there a petrographic lab being set up in this country, or where is everything going? Because that's probably one of the slowest items is getting that work done. But if there's this much seriousness within our blocks, there's a call to be made as a council in our own social housing, and to let our building control management systems know what we're allowing, because as we see the amount of planning permissions that's come through on a weekly basis, you can rest assured 80-90% of them are building with blocks. So we need to have a plan in place going forward, as well as what we're trying to do here today. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Canning. Councillor McBrearty.
Well, thank you, Chairman. And I just want to compliment you on the way that the meeting's going, because it's very constructive, and pity other people wouldn't take the example. But I want to say this. I want to thank John Gallagher, because you have now exonerated me today, and the fact that what I've been trying to do and expose what has been happening here. I shared my father's report. I shared my cousin Breeze McConnell and her husband Dermot Farrell's report on sulphide attack, which is classed as a test suite C. Now, 0.1% is the level for concrete, and that means everything concrete. And you read out the legislation that I read out on Monday at the meeting. And IS 465 is in contravention of that legislation, because it only deals with certain deleterious materials, and the people who created that IS 465, Damien McKay, one of them, Aidan O'Connell, another one, and Dr. Ambrose and Dr. James Lombard, who created the pyrite scheme, who's now deceased, may rest in peace. Those other two that I mentioned should be prosecuted. And what do you call it? I will go after them in the courts in my father's case. We will call people to account by issuing subpoenas to force them to give evidence why they created a standard that is in direct contravention to the standards set down by the European Union and by the Irish authorities. Now, the facts are here. Oxidisation, John, is the biggest problem now facing these homes because of the deterioration of the outside of these homes. Now, once you start touching the outside of these properties, oxidisation kicks in dramatically and accelerates the sulphide minerals that are contained not only just in the blocks, but in the concrete foundations itself. Now, what people need to understand is, if I go out now today and I take down the outer skin of my block, and I take out my subfloor, my foundations are going to be attacked by oxidisation, which will accelerate the sulphide minerals that are in my blockwork and in my concrete. Because if it's in the concrete block, it must be in the concrete foundation. Because my father's property and my cousin's property, the concrete foundations came from the same manufacturer as does the blocks came from the same manufacturer. Now, in the next issue, there's a number of issues in the next issue that I want to go into that you're going to be doing in your next report. But I have to say this. We must now ask the Mica Action Group and the people to step aside and allow proper legal representation to take over from here and let the proper experts deal with this. That has been the failure of this from day one. Now, when the Mica Action Group, and I'm not criticising them because they're homeowners, they're not experts, but in 2014, when they had their first meeting, established at the end of 2013, they did not have the proper legal representations at that time and were not given the right legal advice at that time. Plus, they didn't have the proper experts giving them advice. But more importantly, the standard that you read out there in your report was already in place. That is the fundamental issue here. Now, it's not the Irish legislation on this is to blame. What is to blame in this here whole scandal to date is the policing of the industry itself. The concrete industry and the construction industry are not being policed properly. And it's down to a fact that it's a self-regulatory industry. The legislation is there, but because the industry is not being policed, that is where the failure of where this came into. Now, the next issue is, going forward, the only way, in my opinion, to deal with this issue is in the courts, because the government are deliberately delaying the inevitable, which is these houses all need demolished. Now, Donegal County Council have put out an e-tender, and you obviously have been listening to me behind the scenes and the many arguments and the many discussions that I've had with John McLaughlin and others concerning this issue that I haven't discussed in the public domain. And the issue is, Donegal County Council has realised what I've been saying because of what I've given them in evidence of sulphide attack. They are now going to test their own properties for all deleterious materials and all sulphide minerals. And I take my hat off to the council people who made that decision, because they realised that, as Joe People said before he left the council, there was obviously something in the wind working. The council tenants will get a Rolls Royce job. The poor homeowner like myself and thousands others and property owners will get a Morris Minor. That's what they're getting, because of what has been done here and the failure to ignore what has happened. Now, I'm not being critical, and I might come across critical of Ann Owens and Eileen Doherty, but they went to America to a sulphide conference in October 2019 and came back and didn't disclose any information that they found out about sulphide minerals in the US. Now, Connecticut, and my document covers all these issues. In Connecticut, in Massachusetts, in Maurice in Quebec, and in Norway, a rail project, pyrrhotite has destroyed those properties. Destroyed engineering projects such as the rail project in Norway. Now, I just want to explain to you, people don't really understand what happened in Norway. They were digging out the rail tunnel and they were using the aggregate to mix it for the concrete when they discovered that they had high levels of pyrrhotite. Now, my cousins report the pyrrhotite levels are 2.4%. That is 239.9% above the recommendation. So, what I want to say here is, you're going testing, John, on Monday. You're taking core samples from St. Johnstone. And I'm not being critical of this, but I wish to point out the following. You're going to take 6 samples from each house. Now, that's in direct breach of IS 465 protocols, because you must take 8 samples from each property, no less than 2 from the inside. Now, there's a chain of custody. Now, I know for a fact, I've been speaking to engineers in the council, and I'm not going to name them, but they have suggested to the council they need to be trained under IS 465 protocols, which is a false Irish standard that shouldn't be there in the first place. So what I'm saying to you is, when those core samples are taken, will the department actually say to the council, you have no chain of custody because you have only 6 samples? Do you understand where I'm coming from, John? And there's a possibility they could do that, because you haven't abided by IS 465 legislations. Now, I have evidence to prove that the government have sent a letter to Cllr County Council and to the 5 homeowners who had their homes tested, and they rejected what their engineer recommended, which was demolition, on the grounds that it wasn't within IS 465 protocols. And you're probably aware of that because of the association that the chief executives all over the country have with each other when they meet once a month. Now, the facts are, and these are the facts, you must test if you're testing looking for funding from the department properly, so you don't give them no excuse that they can reject the core samples. And if they reject the core samples, then you'll have to start the process all over again. So I would suggest, and I'm not demanding, I'm suggesting to you that you tell the contractor to take 8 samples on Monday from each house for the sake of 2 more samples. So, but the problem you've got is none of your engineers are actually trained in IS 465 protocols under the training by Damien McKay, the man who created this uncontroversial, or this controversial Irish standard that shouldn't be in place in the first place. Now, I want to touch on the fact that you have a number of homeowners who made 8 petitions to the Petitions Committee in the European Parliament last week. Now, the first failure of those homeowners and the people that helped them prepare those petitions. Now, I'm one person that fully understands a petition to the Petitions Committee in the European Parliament, because I made one in 2005 on the legal aid issue at the Morris Tribunal. Unsuccessfully, but it was left open. Couldn't interfere with the Irish judicial system. Now, the petitions are by 8 people who are affected by this, and it goes as following. Petition number by a certain person who's Irish on defective quality of certain building blocks due to the presence of mica in Ireland. Now, the facts are, John, it's all deleterious materials and sulphide minerals. Right? Now, that's the first mistake in that petition. First of all, Ireland has the legislation. It's not the legislation in Ireland, it's the policing of the industry is the problem. Now, if you go to the conclusions, and it's a public document, by the way, this. If you go to the conclusions, and I'm forensic, by the way. I'm forensic. Now, when you go to the conclusions of this, it's very, very simple of what is happening here with the political football that's been used in this whole crisis to date. Now, Luke Ming Flanagan, in my opinion, hasn't a clue. But he's playing to the audience in Donegal. Oh, look what I'm doing. Vote for me in the next European elections. Well, I'll soon expose that before I'm finished. But anyway, conclusion. In the light of the above, and based on the information received so far, the issue seems to be a national level. That means Ireland. National level. Either at the level of setting requirements for the use of construction products and safety of buildings and civil engineering works, or at the level of inspections of construction products being placed on the market. Market surveillance, building control, and planning enforcement on the sites of the quarries, and planning enforcement on conditions within those sites where they're manufacturing blocks. Now, the last part's the most important part of this. In addition, the Commission only has the empowerment to pursue complaints about infringements of EU laws by member states, and it cannot be therefore pursue those that concern a private dispute. They can't pursue the Irish government because the Irish government is abiding by the legislation that you named, ISEN, European Nations 12620/2002, which has been amended, and SR, the Standard Recommendation 16/2004. You've already said it, 0.1% is the level for pyrrhotite and other sulphite minerals. Now, the other sulphite minerals that are showing up are rare pyrite, minor pyrite, chalcopyrite, and the most devastating one, which is marcasite. And the iron sulfides is even worse. Now, the facts are, the people that put in this petition weren't advised properly. So it goes back to what I've been saying from day one. 2012, I told families, get a proper lawyer, get proper legal representation, and get the right legal opinions. 2013 was the same. 2014, I said the same. In the very last meeting I attended in Greenan Hotel, where I was booed by some people because I was advocating what I'm advocating now today. Now, I would ask the members to be very cautious what you recommend in this committee now today, because of the information contained in my document, the information that John Cllr has issued here today through the council, because we, my family, are going to expose in the courts the failure of IS 465 and the statutory instrument SI 25. And be reassured we are going to do it, because we've done it before and we have travelled the road and we've been on the road for justice, and I'm going to continue to be on the road for justice whether people like what I've got to say or not. And I just want to say this, Chairman. Thank you for being patient and allowing me to explain properly and not under pressure of being on a mute button, to explain properly what the hell has been going on here from day one. It's a cover-up, and it goes back to the point that I've made from day one. Now, people think when you say systemic corruption that people are corrupt. That's not the case. It's a failure of an organisation or a process. And what that means is, we've all buried our heads in the sand here. I've even buried my own head in the sand. I knew my family have bought stuff of the manufacturer for 40 years, and I believed in 2014, Jesus Christ, God, Our Lady, please don't let me. I've been through enough. My family's been through enough. Please don't let us have this problem with this scandal that's gone down on, man-made scandal down on its own. But the reality is, it's all over this county. I have a case in Donegal town now, a tenant's purchase scheme, built by Donegal County Council, pyrrhotite. I have a holiday home in Killybegs on my books. Lawyers are dealing with both cases, pyrrhotite. And they haven't been tested yet, but by visual inspection, from my own knowledge and experience, talking to experts like you have yourself, John, talking to Dr. Robbie Goodhue, having many conversations with Dr. Ambrose McCluskey, etc., and other experts. And I have Des Pilo, one of the top forensic accountants in the country, who worked for me in my case against the AIB Bank in Belfast. This is the type of people that I talk to on a constant basis. I have senior counsels. I have a QC, Ronan Lavery, one of the top constitutional lawyers on the island of Ireland. I have Martin Giblin, senior counsel. I have Tom Creed, an expert in local authority law, and a top civil litigator and criminal lawyer as well, the same as Martin Giblin. I have James O'Donnell, junior counsel. I have 2 firms of solicitors to back that up. Now, people need to start listening to me and listen to proper legal representation and proper legal advice on this issue going forward, because I won't give up. It's not in my DNA to give up. I'll never give up. And anybody that ever boxed, or anybody that ever sparred, or anybody that ever had a street fight with will tell you, my DNA means that I will never give up. I've been beaten in the ring. Not that much, but I've been beaten in the ring, but I always go back up again and try to come back and fight back again. But I'll tell you this now, I'll never, ever give up, because there's 100 members of my family that are destroyed with this. Immediate family, first cousins, second cousins, third cousins, a wider circle family, friends, and the amount of people that I know and my father knows in this county. People should never underestimate the support that me and my father has in this whole scandal to date, Martin. Because the truth needs to be told to these homeowners. And this document, I'm working with the council at the minute, and I really appreciate what Jim Doherty and the rest of the council did yesterday. I want this document of mine circulated to every home in this county, and Donegal County Council has responsibility to do that. Plus, to circulate what John Gallagher has issued here today, because that is now an acknowledgement that this government has got this whole issue wrong. But the problem is, the homeowners who don't have the experience in this issue should never have been involved in a working group without having proper legal experts and proper experts in their fields, because they are not their homeowners. They're ordinary homeowners who have no experience in fighting the Irish state and no experience in dealing with top senior civil servants that are paid to make sure that the government and the state save money any way they can. There's no way out of this, because once this goes into the courts, IS 465 will never be able to survive the tsunami that's going to be coming at them with court cases. So, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Gary McMonigal.
Thank you, Chair. Back to the presentation, and exactly, John, we going from what you're saying, and we've been thinking this for quite a while, that option one is not an option as such. That is the reason why these applications are taking so long, because the department is not accepting the recommendations of the engineers that they set up. You know, it just beggars belief. And I really, welcome the fact that we are going to be at long last upfront about this. A lot of us have been raising this issue and the issues around the application process, and indeed the decisions made and the reports by the engineers, and why option one was always being refused, basically, or put to the one side, and 2D5 was being pushed as the only actions that was going to be taking place. So we do need to put a formula of words together. We do need to get this out there to the public domain, and we do need to talk to the people, because they're suffering enough with going through Mica, and we all have family and friends who are and have houses that are affected by the Mica, and some of us on this call have their own homes affected by it, so they know everything that they've had to go through. They know the strains and the stresses that it puts on them and their families. So we need to be supporting them, and we need to be telling them the truth, and we need to be upfront with them. And Albert Doherty said at the beginning, and I just want to say in relation to his proposal, and I just said to Liam that it wasn't that we were trying to supersede or overtake what the council said, but this committee needs to support that motion of Albert Doherty's. And if it needs a seconder, I'm seconding it here now, because the message has to go out loud and clear what this committee is about, and where we stand on that important issue of the sliding scale and the scheme currently being proposed. Because the whole stuff now that is being put out there public is going to be out in the public domain now. There's going to be 100 odd questions being asked about it. Yes, and Frank has been raising them issues, and we've all been aware of them. Frank didn't think that we've not been aware. We have been aware of the the materials involved and coming through on the tests. And the IAS 465 was dealing with the Mica and the main, and that was still sufficient to get all of the much needed redress scheme. But now, for some reason, the government, the department, I should say, is reneging on option one and refusing to acknowledge it. And we need to get to the bottom of that. We need to hold them to account. I suggested at the meeting, the last council meeting, about that we should seek the meeting with the minister. The chairman of this committee come on the radio next day and enhance that further and explain it better. That needs to be done ASAP. This here working group and our council, the body of the council, the members, have been excluded long enough, and for far too long as far as I'm concerned. It's time we were in there at the coalface talking to those in the department, because we are the people at the coalface. We're the people who are affected by it. Our families are affected by it. Our friends are, and we're dealing with it every day, and the pressures and the fallout of this scandal. So I think, as Martin said during the week, we're best placed to talk about this. We have the information, and if we can do it in a sane and reasonable way, then people will listen to us. But we have to be sane and reasonable and respectful about how we put our case, and that should always be at the forefront of all of that. But John, just now, where does it now? And the other thing I would like that Siobhan would send that presentation today now, while we're sitting here on this call, they send that presentation to us so that we have it and we can digest it and go through it, because we are going to be getting calls after today's meeting from all them people who've been phoned this last number of weeks, but in particular this week, because they have been told that we are doing a meeting here today and we hope to have updated information back for them. So we need to have that. But I would like to know, right, what is the next steps? Where do we go from here? How are we going to address this with the department? When is the next meeting? And when will members of our council, the elected members of our council, they be present at them next engagements with the working group and the people in the department? Because that has to be a must going forward. There's no other way, and I certainly won't be accepting no other way, that if we don't have representatives from our elected members at them meetings in the future. I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McMonigal. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Chair, and wish to acknowledge all members contributing. It's very, very helpful. John, that was a very frank exchange with us and for us. And in the last slide, you talked about IS 465, the operation reality. Today, I had a conversation with Patricia there that's present, and I wanted to share that the rumour mill in the local community was that the application process was coming to a halt, that the conveyor belt was grinding to a halt, and I took it as perception. But given what you've shared with us, the generic response that I received, I want to thank Siobhan and Patricia for giving me a response for an applicant. A generic response from the council is not acceptable any longer. There will have to be a frank public statement clarifying from council the situation for all applicants, for all would-be applicants, and of course an item that's coming up next, how we transfer into what was a proposed enhanced scheme. And given, I shouldn't go into that area yet, but John, given how you have shared your information, and as Councillor Canning says, the increased information gathered and the increased experience about the deleterious items in our building industry, how do you respond to meeting the damage threshold which comes across in the document I mentioned earlier, all your questions answered. The questions are not answered as regards meeting the damage threshold when you have shared that the threshold and the damage has multiplied and increased since IS 465 was conceived. So why allow and enable a minister and the rest to say, see you in February? And also, I suppose, 74 change of circumstances, that was tough to take that statistic there. But SCSI, members of the Society of Chartered Surveyors of Ireland, have they contributed by being party to the 74 circumstances changing? And if so, then the enhanced scheme, and I stand corrected in places there from the additional information, the enhanced scheme fails to deliver on all aspects. Just in relation to the fellow councillor comments, I would not push for the proposal if I thought we were councillors alone. But we're not councillors alone. We were set up as a subcommittee, and the person that I mentioned in his contribution was from Michael Doherty. He's not a councillor. So I see our proposal complementing what all the councillors did, not just being an echo or whatever. It's additional. But and I also believe, as we go through the next item on the agenda, Chair, there may be additional matters that we want to present to government in addition to what I've asked, and that's the withdrawal of the sliding proposals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. Councillor Martin Farns, next. Kerry Cross,
Thanks, Chair. I think it's a very good meeting, and we're getting a lot out of it there today. And I agree with all the other speakers and what they've said there. I agree with Councillor Jeremy Monagle and what he said as well. I think that going forward, any more in the whole negotiations, like we need to get past that at some stage with the Mica Action Group and the working committee there. And I think that yourself, Chair, and the Vice Chair really need to be in there at those meetings and making representation on behalf of all the people of Donegal and on our behalf as elected members. I think we would have said this at council meetings so many times. Oh God, yes, Councillor McGuinness is gone now, but the 36 councillors that are there at present are fully supportive of the 100% redress. Albert, obviously something coming up there in the next one about the sliding scale. I think we all know where that should go after last Monday's meeting. I think what the outcome of that needs to be. And it's confusing a lot of people out there, and people that I've been speaking to, quite a number of them, would like to see that abolished. As I say, we're not experts, but I think I'm correct in what you were saying there, John, and you're thinking, like, I'm right to say that the department were not accepting the engineers' reports on option one. No, I think if that is a case, like that's terrible, because, like as I said before when I spoke the first time, any of the houses that I looked at, there was only one option they had, and that was, to take the house down, really. But they didn't have any other options. I think it's a good meeting here today, and if something can come out of it, it'll be certainly very well worthwhile. But we're learning a few things here today, and Councillor McBrearty there spoke very well as well, and a lot of the stuff that he's saying, he seemed to know his homework in relation to different materials that that are in these blocks. I wouldn't have the same expertise, obviously, but he's obviously done his homework on them, and so I think we have to take a lot of that on board as well. So anyway, we'll see where we go from here. Thank you for letting me on. Thanks.
Thanks, Terry Cross.
Chair, thank you for that. I'll be brief here. In light of the unanimous support for the abolition of the sliding scale at the last meeting on Monday, and I, as a member of this subcommittee, support unequivocally the abolition of the sliding scale, and I also support Councillor Albert Doherty's motion on that and his proposal on that. I also support Councillor Martin Barnes' assertion that you, Chair, and Albert, as the Vice Chair, should be involved in all future consultations, and that goes without saying. It hasn't happened up to this, but it needs to happen from here on in. I would also welcome Councillor McBrearty's in the exploration of all these issues, and clearly he has done a lot of work on all this, and I think that it's important that his assertions on all this should be looked at and taken into consideration, because clearly, as I said, he has done a lot of work, and I welcome his positive contribution here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Crossan. Councillor Jimmy Kavanagh and then Councillor Liam Blaney.
Thanks very much, Councillor McDermott. Just to acknowledge the contributions of everyone there, and also to I don't think anybody has any problem with what Councillor Doherty is saying about what goes out from today's meeting. It's absolutely no harm that we go it that way. Either way, it doesn't matter. I don't think so. Or go both ways, and from both County Council and from here. Just a quick question. Given information we've been given here today, and the issue with delays and so on, I mean, could we not now go to the department and ask them that the new regime for testing, the cost of €500 to €700 be applied immediately, and that people be refunded the balance so to address hardship issues? Because that's a very real problem now, and I don't see why we can't make that request, because these people are not going to get their money back. It's a lot of money to go out of pocket, a lot of money to be waiting for. People don't have it, so I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. I think that's a very, very good comment, a very good suggestion to make. I think that the stage 1 applications that's on at the minute, there is no reason that the money can't be paid back to them less than €500, and that's fair enough if that's what has to happen. But certainly that is something that should happen for those families, and to leave them dragging out for God knows how long, because we don't really know. We can't give an exact date as to when this is going to be resolved. I think it would be.
I'm happy to formally propose.
I formally second that for you, Councillor Gavin. I formally second that. Councillor Liam Blaney.
Thanks, Chair. And first of all, I'd like to thank John Gallagher for the presentation he gave us there. And, I'm supposed to say that's alarming. Would be an understatement. But I think it is alarming the way that the whole thing has evolved as far as IS 465 is concerned. And I suppose maybe for people that already has gone through the scheme, whereas the process has gone through stage 1, I know a lot of people was asked for half their 6,500 for the initial stage 1. They were asked for an extra €1,000 if they wanted to go and get tested for pyrotite. Some were not in position to do that. Therefore, they don't know in the report what pyrotite they have. Others were in position to do it, or source the funding one way or another, the extra €1,000. And it was well worth their while doing it, because they found out a lot of them have got the law that they have above the limit of pyrotite as well. But to think now that
coming to realisation as this should have been included from day one. The people that couldn't afford to these down at this stage, it could make a difference of a demolition or not in some people's cases. And therefore, if they did do another option, more likely, if they had the pyrotite, they're going to have to come back somewhere down the line again and remove the rest of the defective materials in their house. You know, and this is huge repercussions right down the line for people that it has applied, that they weren't able to afford the extra €1,000 for the pyrotite test. But I don't know where we go from here as far as that's concerned, where they go from here as far as that's concerned. But I'd like to thank John for being so frank about what that presentation he gave us. And as far as the proposals is concerned here, Albert's proposal, I have no problem supporting Albert's proposal. And the way you've handled the meeting, Chairman, I have to say, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, the meeting has been too hard to handle. I hope Frank doesn't mind me saying either. But Frank, it's due to your actions today that the meeting has been hard to handle. And hopefully that's a sign of the way that the meeting is going to be handled or conducted by the members in the future. So that's it for the time being, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all the members get a chance to speak there. Yeah, and I'll just make a few comments, John. I think that everybody has stated everybody's frustrations at the minute as to where it's at. But I do think, and I've said this before we spoke there, I think it's important that us as a local authority, we are the administrators of this scheme. And it's important that we're honest and straight and truthful with the people out there. Because, as I said earlier, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of frustration. Frustration is built up over not being able to get an answer. That's what builds up a lot of frustration. At least if we can answer people and say, look, this is the situation, this is the way it is, at least people know where they sit. Because at the minute, people don't know what's happening. And I think not knowing is causing the problem here. I think Councillor Cavan has made a very, very important proposal, and I have no problem supporting Councillor Doherty's proposal either. And Councillor Cavan's proposal that we do, I think, get onto the department first thing Monday morning. And I know, John, you and Patsy said that there is a meeting with the department next week, hopefully. I think we should be questioning, can those stage 1 applications, people not be given back their money? Because I think 16 or 18 months of people out of money is just, people can't afford it. They just can't afford it. And I think if we could do that, that would take a lot of the pressures off the families that's out there. I think we should be trying to alleviate as much pressure on people as humanly possible at the minute on the jobs of Christmas. And I know it's probably not going to be possible to do that prior to Christmas, but at least if people knew early New Year that they were going to receive their money back. I think if we could do that, I think it would be very, very important to do that. And I think also, John, I'm going to let you on now to reply. I think we need to be clear as to what message we send out from this meeting today. I think it's very important that there's a clear message to the homeowners as to where we stand and where the council stands in relation to the applications, and maybe you can get some guidance in that in your synopsis of what you're going to say. Thanks, John.
Martin, I might come in first, if that's okay.
And just before I finish, I just want to say one other thing. I want to just acknowledge the work that John and his team, Patsy and your team, Patricia, and everybody is doing in relation to the Mica and the Mica office, because it is a massive bit of work, a massive bit of pressure. And the girls that's on the desk, they are fantastic, and the work that they do, I think, needs to be acknowledged as well. The stresses that they're under, and not being able to give a straight answer as well, because, as you know, we're all in that boat where we don't know what is the right thing to say. And I think that's the important message that has to be got out today. Thanks, Patsy.
Martin, I suppose just to outline what we have done to date, like we've raised these issues with the department, and we've sought an early meeting with officials to go through it. The department have reverted with a view to trying to get a meeting set up as early as possible, and to include the housing agency officials also, if that's possible. And I suppose while I appreciate that, the enhanced scheme is important, and going forward as to how that's going to be rolled out and getting the detail on that and the timelines and so forth, I think the immediate issue is as opposed to how we can deal with these current applications that, based on the current regulations that we have to apply, that how we can actually deal with those, and conscious, as members have outlined, that people who have applied and are waiting to get their stage 1 approval are waiting on money back for the initial fees, and technically in line with the regulations we can't do that until we've actually issued a confirmation of eligibility approval. But I would also be conscious, members, that like a lot of the applications that have come in the last month, like the original testing and sampling and that would have been done quite a while ago, earlier in the year, and I would anticipate there's a lot more people out there who are in the process as well, so we need to bear that in mind also. But I suppose in summary, maybe before I would just ask John to come in with any other clarifications, that we've had engagement with a view to try and get that meeting set up as early as possible to try and see how we can move it on. And I suppose that's where we're at the minute, Chair. John, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thanks, Patsy. Chair, just...
Sorry, 1 wee second. Councillor Terry Crossan wanted to make 1 point there before you come on.
Yeah, and I would like to apologise to John. I failed to congratulate him on his presentation, and I thank him for the very informative presentation that it is. I would just like, when I've heard that there is an upcoming meeting, hopefully at the earliest possible opportunity with the department, I would propose that the chair and the vice chair are included in those negotiations or exchanges. Thank you, Chair, for that.
Thank you, Councillor Crossan. Thank you. Councillor Blinny, did you want to say something there?
Just a second, that proposal there, our Chair.
Thank you. Okay, John.
Thanks, Chairman, and thanks, Patsy. The only thing just to add, I suppose it's a reminder, the existing scheme is based on the Chartered Engineers report demonstrating that the proposed solution is the minimum feasible remedial work solution that'll remedy the building as per IS 465, which was developed in 2018. We're 3 years further down the road now, and there's considerable learning since that, and that's the difficulty that we're in here, trying to do everything that we can not to refuse any application, whilst at the same time we have a set of rules to work to. And as Patsy said, we have written to the department on this, and hopefully we'll be meeting them as soon as possible about exactly what we've been talking about today. But I think I'm glad of the opportunity to brief the members fully on this, because it's important that you are fully aware of the constraints that we're working under and what we're trying to do here. And I would say fundamentally, what we're trying to do especially is to move applications on and do everything that we can not to refuse anybody, to bring everybody with us. And I look forward to the meeting with the department in that regard. That's okay, Patsy. Thanks, John.
Patsy, do you want to come on there?
No, I wanted just to concur with what John said, and what I meant to say as well. Martin acknowledged the comments you made about the staff, because from the very outset, the team have taken the approach, we're here to assist and help homeowners in our county, friends and neighbours and relations and so forth, that, everybody's been affected. And that's at the outset the team have been endeavouring to do. And as John has outlined, obviously there are constraints and certain due diligence in line with regulations that we're obliged to apply, and that's where the challenges come. But I appreciate the comments on that, because it's been challenging for all.
Thank you, Patsy. Okay, so Patsy, those few things that we discussed there in relation to the department, and whether myself and the vice chair can attend that, maybe you would let us know whether that can happen, or do you think that is a possibility that they would let us be part of that? I think we need to put our foot on this and say that we're not taking no for an answer no more. We demand that our committee is represented in negotiations.
We'll certainly share the views of the committee when we're talking next to the department, and make that request.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, guys, the next item on the agenda was to have a discussion on the revised scheme. Does anybody want to come on, Councillor McBrearty?
Well, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, there are a number of issues that we need to discuss concerning the enhanced scheme. And the sliding scale is a sideshow. And I'm not criticising people for raising this issue about the sliding scale, because they don't have a full understanding of actually what the sliding scale is. Now, the government working group, which was made up from ordinary homeowners, they put the sliding scale into that document. And I wish to go on two figures. 1,700, a house 1,700 square feet at €160 per square foot comes in just over 170,000, right? You get 91% of the grant, and those figures are done on the old scheme, the 90-10 scheme. Now, a house 4,000 square feet at €131 per square foot comes in at €524,000. Now, you get 47% from the scheme towards that house. Now, that raises a huge constitutional issue. But, Martin, as I discussed with you on the phone, you price work every day of the week. You never, ever go into a negotiation with anybody going into looking for a price below what you're actually looking to achieve. Now, that's what has happened here because of inexperience and not having the proper expertise advising you what you should be looking for. Now, if you go on with the enhanced scheme document, and I have this forensically and I don't even have to look at it, €145 per square foot for the first 1,000, 110 for the second 1,000, and 100 for the next 1,000. So, basically, that's not 100% redress. 100% redress means completely my home to be completely rebuilt at no cost to me. Now, that's not the case. This current scheme is actually going to be worse than the old scheme. Now, the threshold criteria that you must meet is designed on option number 4 and option number 5. Your engineer comes out and he does what we know now as a visual inspection. That's now going to be called an assessment, but it's technically a visual inspection. So if you're home and you know you have deleterious materials and sulphide minerals in it, your engineer, if your house is not like some of the houses in Inishowen and Letterkenny and even my own area, it's only got a few cracks here and there, that engineer can only recommend in the application process. He can only recommend that part of your house as under the IS 465 protocols entitled to remediation works. Now, what that means is, it means that the train is getting slower and slower to getting your proper things done to your home, which is full demolition. Now, engineers' reports on sulphide attack, any engineer worth his salt will recommend full demolition. top experts like Martin Doherty, who you know personally, Martin, and Dr. Ambrose McCluskey, and other engineers, 12 of them in total on that list, are all saying there's only one option open: full demolition. And it doesn't matter what stage your house is at, it's full demolition. Now, this scheme entry point is, if you want demolition, you will have to prove, not to the council, but to the Department of Housing. The Department of Housing makes that decision what testing is done then in your house for core samples. They have completely excluded Donegal County Council's process in this, and that is down to the homeowners having no experience in recommending that proposition. It's in their paper document that they describe as their paper, and it's entered into the working group document of 71 pages. Now, the facts are that that document clearly is in contravention of what the campaign was about in the first place, 100%. And I don't really blame people, because they're homeowners. They have no experience of the courts. They have no experience of engineering. They have no experience of the whole issue that has gone on here. And I'm delighted to now see that everybody's using the word deleterious materials, but you also must use the word sulphide minerals, because it's the problem, sulphide minerals, not deleterious materials. That's only part of the problem, but the biggest problem is sulphide minerals. Now, when you take all that into context, the sliding scale is irrelevant, because you won't meet the threshold. Say, for example, you're 55 years of age. You won't get into that scheme if your house has only got a few cracks here and there, but by the time you retire at 66 and your house still doesn't show enough signs, you will only get option 2, option 3, option 4, option 5. Now, I made the point at the meeting on Monday that this 20,000 for rental and storage is a red herring. It's a big white elephant, because you have to get option 1 and option 2, which is not, this enhanced scheme is not designed for you to get that. It's designed to give people small remedial works ongoing over many, many years. Now, 10 houses a year, I estimate that probably will get through, maybe 10 houses a year will get full demolition. The rest of the houses will be given remedial works. Now, Donegal County Council will have no power to speak to the council about people's applications, because the application goes into the council and then goes directly to the department, and the department then takes over. The council are only administrators, and that has left us as members completely useless to the homeowner and to the property owners that come to us for representations, because we'll have to go directly to the department, and the department will say, IS 465 protocols, this is what it is, and that's you get that, take it or leave it. Now, beware of Greeks bearing gifts. Now, Albert, as a school teacher, you should know what that means. Well, be careful about your sliding scale, because I'm telling you this now, and I'm not criticising Albert on the fact that your proposal today, but be very careful what you decide to do today, because in the courts coming, and there will be a public inquiry, I can bet you that now, because I want to explain this. In the same scandal, and my father and my scandal into Garda corruption, and I'm not going to go into that, we're at the same stage now as we were back then. We're getting very close to a public inquiry. And what people need to realise, when a public inquiry is established, there won't be a piece of paper that tribunal of inquiry will look at. They will look at everything. Everybody will have to be able to stand over what they're proposing and what they're saying, what they're recommending, what they're saying in this whole crisis, this whole man-made scandal. Because this is a man-made scandal created by Mother Earth, what comes out of the earth. But the man that made it is the man that is to blame for it. So the reality here is, Chairman, be careful of what Greeks are bearing. And the issue is, it has finally been admitted here today that the biggest problem that we have is sulphide minerals. And if you look at my document right across it, I mean, the last part I'll go into is the history of all deleterious materials and sulphide minerals problems in Donegal. In 2005 to 2008, homes and properties in Donegal showing structural problems. That's when it all started showing its head, especially down in the epicentre of Inishowen, the most beautiful part of Donegal. 2008 to 2013, the Mica and Pyrite being associated with the structural problems in County Donegal and County Mayo. At the end of 2013, the Mica Action Group was formed, right? 2016, expert panel established by the Fine Gael and Labour Party government to look into what was happening in Donegal and Mayo. As we all know, 2018, National Standards Authority of Ireland, tasked by the government to create a new Irish standard, IS 465. But the report of 2017 from the expert panel, June 2017, recommended a full study. And now John Gallagher would have been talking to Robbie Goodhue, Dr. Robbie Goodhue of Trinity, on this subject, as I have been. And Dr. Ambrose McCluskey has stated the same about the full study and the peer literature that is needed for that study. Now, 2018, the National Standards Authority of Ireland established a technical committee to create the new Irish standard. Mr. Dennis McCarthy, former Chief Executive of Waterford County Council, was appointed as chairperson. May 2019, Minister Joe McHugh announces the statutory instrument SI 25/9010 for defective concrete blocks. October 2019, the Mica Action Group members Anne Owens and Dr. Eileen Doherty are invited to the Pyrite Conference in Connecticut, and when they returned, their silence was deafening. Now, I have my own theory on why that happened, and a public inquiry will look at it. And I bet you I'll be proven right what my theory actually is. Now, the 31st of January 2020, Minister Joe McHugh announces the new 9010 SI 2025 certain deleterious materials defective concrete block grant scheme for Donegal and Mayo. Signed into law. 4 days later, general election announced. My theory on that will be proven right as well in a tribunal of inquiry. June 2020, Donegal and Mayo County Council start to take applications from affected homeowners. That's when this scheme started to surface of the flaws that were in IS 465. Now, May 2021, Paddy Diver, a homeowner and property owner, started the Boycott Cassidy's campaign. 15th of June 2021, 100% No Less campaign, formed by Paddy Diver and others, held a rally in Dublin City that we were all at and all supported. Now, 15th of June, the same day, 2021, after the rally, the government formed a working group for homeowners and appointed Paddy Diver, Anne Owens, Dr. Eileen Doherty and Michael Doherty, PRO of the Mica Action Group, to represent affected homeowners in Donegal. Homeowners from Mayo were also appointed to sit on this working group. That is when the failure of not bringing experts into that working group has failed the people of Donegal today. And I don't want to criticise these people, but they are not experts. There was not one barrister who has an expertise in this field was on that committee. 30th, just two more points, and that's me finished. 30th of September 2021, government working group handed in their paper to the government, which was followed by homeowners' position paper. That's the other failure. 30th of November 2021, government published what they called Your Questions Answered, Defective Concrete Block Schemes, Homeowners Still in Limbo, and what it should be called, No Questions Answered. I rest my case, Your Honour, as it would say in court. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Doherty, did you want to come on there? And does anybody want to come on now with a quick overview of what you want to do here? And then we'll have one more item on the agenda then, because it is now 5:30.
Yeah.
So,
Chair, thank you, Chair. Colleagues and John, Tricia, Patsy and your team as well. What I want to highlight is what I thought and what I think are inconsistencies with a week's difference in the document your questions answered and the correspondence from the Minister. And first of all, it says, as regards first steps, the homeowner should engage a suitably qualified chartered engineer to carry out an inspection of your home. Should they be of the view that the dwelling is damaged due to the use of defective blocks, building condition assessment in accordance with Irish Standard 465 can be prepared on your instruction. Homes seeking admission to the scheme will be required to meet a damage threshold, and the damage threshold is necessary to ensure worst affected homes are prioritised. I read into that at the beginning that here was, once again, a busy time for the homeowner and the chartered engineer. But in number 5, when it clarifies the role of the housing agency, applications received by a local authority will be referred to the housing agency to review the building condition assessment report. Once a home has met and determine if the home has met the damage threshold for entry to the scheme. And once it has met the damage threshold, the housing agency will arrange the assessment, testing, categorisation process and recommend the appropriate remediation option and the grant amount. That was 30th of November issued, and I saw inconsistencies was clarify the role of the surveyor and the recommendation and clarify what difference it is with the housing agency. The letter from the Minister of December 7th advises us that a revised application process will be introduced, which will only require the homeowner to submit an initial building condition assessment. The new words I see is only and initial, at minimal cost, recoupable on entry to the scheme. And then it tells us the housing agency will take over testing, sampling, categorisation of remedial works. It refers to us then, councillors and council. Local authorities continue to have a key administrative role to play in the scheme, with the housing agency taking the core role in ensuring appropriate remediation option and is selected. And while the bulk of changes will require primary legislation, which I take as a delayed time, due to be published in Feb, there are other steps. So, John, my reading of it is that there was inconsistencies in what was shared in the two articles that I've shared with you. And I suppose my question as well, what changes from those two areas and from what your other experiences and context, what changes do you see in the role of Donegal County Council, administrative and otherwise, given the in-depth report you gave earlier, John, on the experience we were learning and the different additions we were learning. And of course, that word I mentioned earlier, the damage threshold, who will be making the call on that? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Doherty. Councillor Martin Farn.
Chair, I just want to go back on something there where it was proposed and seconded that yourself and Albert should be in future negotiations, and you would have said there that when John and Patsy are possibly meeting with the department, that they should bring it to their attention. I feel myself like that should something not go away from this meeting here now, or an email sent from the council, say Monday, from this meeting here now, that it was unanimously agreed that yourself and Albert should be part of any future negotiations, and possibly from our own perspective as well. As you said, we're very straight, doing everything right down the line. That the working group know that as well. That would have come out from this meeting as well, because I know you won't have any opposition from the working group. Absolutely not. They would have been quite happy to have you on from the beginning. But I think it would be good manners. But really, I'm just wondering how we should handle this. It's unanimously agreed here today for this committee to go ahead and move forward. I think it's important that yourself and Albert are at future negotiations, that there's no more meetings, these type of meetings, without yourselves being at them, so that, because when you're there, as I said at the other meeting the other day, if you're speaking on the radio or something out there, yourself or Albert, you're speaking on behalf of the other councillors, because you are the chair and the vice chair of this committee, and you're representing us. And it's important that we, obviously, if you're on and you're doing the negotiations, we can get that information back from you so we know precisely what's actually happening. I'm talking about the other committee, not just ourselves here, but all the other councillors. And I think, that was a big mistake that was made at the beginning. It should never have happened. And I'm just wondering how we can sort of move that forward as quickly as possible to make sure that you are actually, whatever meetings after today that are happening with the department and the working group, that you are part of it. So that's what I'm basically saying. So how do we fast forward that?
We'll get Patsy and John to make a comment on that. Next, anybody else? Cllr Blaney, Cllr Crossan, anybody else want to comment? Cllr Blaney?
Just very briefly, Albert touched on there the damage threshold. We don't know yet what this damage threshold is, and I think it would be very important that the information will be made available as soon as possible, because if somebody thinks they may have defective blocks and they see this damage threshold and they see that, well, it might be on a ceiling cracks, and if we look for the engineer to test this, we're going to have to pay him €500, and if he comes back and says we didn't reach the damage threshold, we can't be refunded the €500. The engineer has going to have to get paid. And it could lead to problems down the line. Will the engineer get paid if the people realise then that we didn't reach the damage threshold, and therefore we can't claim it back? Or will it prevent people from applying with a fear of that if they don't reach the damage threshold that they're going to lose €500? Thanks, Chair.
Angela Cavan, did you want to make a comment? Are you all right? All right. Cllr McBrearty, you want to make a quick comment, please?
Just very briefly, Chairman. Thank you. First of all, it's £496 sterling for the third test, which is test suite C, but it comes back as a test suite B sulphides. Now, the issue here is that third test is only conducted under the IAS 465 protocol. Now, if there had been a proper Irish standard created for this testing regime wouldn't be in place where you're having to go for a third test, because down in County Clare, their test suite B, their second test has the sulphides in it. So they have a test suite A and a test suite B. But in Donegal, because of Mica, and because it's been restricted to free muscovite mica, you must do a test suite A, which identifies the problems in your home, and that's a basic test. Test suite B then gives you compression strengths, Newton strength, etc. And then it also shows you an abundance of sulphides. For example, my father's case and my cousin's case, it showed a visual estimate of between 1 and 2%, which is way above the recommendation levels. And your engineer, who is worth their salt, will tell you you must get test suite C. Now, test suite C is covered in IAS 465 because the people who created it knew that there was going to be sulphides raising its head in the testing process. But it doesn't qualify you under the scheme for demolition if you don't meet the threshold in test suite B above the Newton strength of 7.5 Newton. Anything below that, you may get into option 1 and option 2. But if your Newton strength is above, like for example, my father's free muscle Mica level is 16%. That is 11% above the 5% that Petrolab says is adequate. But because he had a 10 Newton block, because his block came in on the inside at 8.2% Newton strength and his outer relief was 11.2, he would only get outer relief option number 3, 4 or 5. But because he has sulphide minerals in his block work, which is more than likely in his foundations, he would qualify for full demolition. But there's a question mark over would the scheme give him that, because it's not included in IS 465. And that is in my document. It's clearly in my document, and it's easy to read the understanding of it. And I would like to think, John, that you've looked at my document at this moment in time. And that document is a lot of information that I got and memorised from the conversations that I've had with Dr. Robbie Goodhue and Dr. Ambrose McCluskey and other engineers that I have known over the years. So that's the point that people need to understand here, Chairman. Because IS 465 is the biggest problem in the room. It's the poison chalice. And the council have been restricted because of that Irish standard IS 465. Thank you, Chairman. And maybe John will make some commentary on what I've said about IS 465 because of that. Now, if they had done testing on sulphide minerals, you wouldn't have to do testing on Newton strength, because if your block work is above 0.1%, you don't need the compression strength test. And because of IS 465, Petrolab is governed, and every other lab is governed under that IS 465 protocol. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor McBrearty. Councillor Paul Canning, did you want to make a comment on any of this, or are you happy enough? You all right? You're okay, Paul, are you?
Yeah, 100%.
All right, thanks. John?
Thanks, Chairman. Councillor Albert Doherty raised, I suppose, the inconsistencies in the documents. I suppose what my own, from what I'm looking at, I suppose it's the same as what you are looking at in terms of whatever information was presented that came out, and I'm looking at the same documentation and the frequently questions that are answered in that regard. So I'm in the same space as the members yourselves in relation to that. My understanding of how it may work, and I'm not involved in this, but my understanding is that the chartered engineer will do a building condition assessment, which is effectively a visual assessment, and that'll come in as part of the application to the council, who will then refer it to the housing agency, and the housing agency will then review that, and in particular review, as Councillor Doherty mentioned, the damage threshold. And I think Councillor Blaney mentioned that as well. I think that's very important. There has to be a lot of clarity around what the damage threshold is. Absolutely very, very important, because that'll dictate whether applications will progress or not progress, as the case may be. And I don't see the council having a role in that. The way it appears to me is that that'll be decisions made at either department or housing agency level, that they'll set a damage threshold, and people that meet that damage threshold, the housing agency will progress forward to do sampling testing, and then coming up with a remedial action. And my understanding, the way I'm reading it, and I'm reading the same documents as you read, members, is that The housing agency will make that call as to what the remedial action is, and it'll progress on that basis. So that's my interpretation from what I've read. I've had no meetings with the department or anybody else in that regard. So there's still a lot of learning to be done in relation to that. But I would agree with the members strongly that the damage threshold is very important here, because if there's properties that have sulphide minerals present, that if the damage threshold isn't meeting a certain bar, that those could be delayed in progressing. I think that's important that we all recognise that. I suppose the points made in relation to the different sulphides and the different sulphides all working either in parallel or together to cause the deterioration of the property are all very well made and very well presented. And in the context of ongoing research, which we know is going on as we speak, through what's happening in the GSI, the Geological Institute of Ireland, looking at exactly what we're talking about here today, the outcome of that's very important as to how that'll feed into this process. And I'm not aware of that information coming out, or even draft information coming out from it. But I think it's very important that information's on the table ASAP in this regard to assist all engineers in progressing this in the right direction. I note the point made by Cllr McBrearty in relation to Petrolab's view in terms of the percentages there, and hopefully that will be clarified as well and confirmed as part of that research. And I would agree that Petrolab are a very large expert company in this field, so they have a considerable amount of knowledge in it. But I suppose the new scheme that's coming at us, in terms of there's a lot of clarity required from our end and from the members' end to know exactly where we're going in this. And I think we've probably homed in today on a very important piece of it, which is that damage threshold, because that seems to be introduced now. And what I expect that to be is some sort of level of cracking, either extent or widths or whatever, that's visually assessed as to whether you're in or out. But I don't know the detail of it, members.
John, can I just ask a quick question? You said that there's a survey being done by geologists, is it, of Ireland?
Yeah.
Is there any guidelines as to when they will have that report? Has there been any indication as to how long that's going on, or how long it will take to do, and when that report? Any indication?
I probably would have to come back to you, Chairman, on that. It was commissioned by the department. It was commissioned by the department, and the Geological Society of Ireland are progressing it. So I can come back to the members on that. I don't know enough detail, members. I don't want to mislead anybody.
Yeah. And John, just one other question for you. In relation to the new scheme, is it being proposed that IS 465 is being reviewed?
And this is only my personal opinion, members, but I would expect and hope that it would. In the context of rolling out any scheme, I would hope, and to take cognizance of all of the additional learning and information that a lot of it has been presented here today, in that context, to allow more certainty as to where we're going.
Yeah, Councillor McBrearty. Quickly, because I want to try and get right up here before
John has hit the nail on the head. The threshold. If your property tests core samples with sulphide, immediate demolition order. That's the most important thing that's come out of this meeting today, not the sliding scale. Now, that threshold, we don't need an IS 465 anymore, because we have already in place the European standards, which has been endorsed by the Irish standard through the National Standards Authority of Ireland. And I would propose that the threshold be done away with immediately, and that the current testing scheme stay in place with a proper independent engineer to evaluate and have your home tested and sent to Petrolab, which is the only lab that can do the proper testing under the legislation of what is already in place, and scrap IS 465 with immediate effect, because it's going to be proven in the courts that IS 465 is completely flawed, and Engineers Ireland have already stated that it's unethical. Unethical. And John, you're part of Engineers Ireland, and I appreciate that you have to go on the guidelines set down by government, but the facts are your organisation, which is one of the oldest in the country, has said publicly in a submission document that IS 465 is unethical. And that's my proposal to this committee. Do away with the threshold and immediately implement 100% redress. You're muted, Chairman. You're muted.
Sorry, I said
Jack must be in the house.
I want to try and get read up here. It's now nearly 6 o'clock on a evening, and I think it's been a very important meeting today, and a very well conducted by everybody. And it's important that these meetings are, because this is a very important committee over the next period of time for the people of the county. And I think if we can all work together, we can certainly make a difference, and we can get our points across to the people that need to hear it.
Chairman, can somebody second my proposal? If they don't, that's up to them.
Apologies. Anybody? Is there a seconder? If not, I want to move on to item number 3 and just get a quick answer from people on this. I put on the agenda. I spoke to my colleague, Councillor Doherty, as well about this. It's the role of this committee and what we see the role of this committee, because I suppose we've probably been a bit hurt over the summer that the committee has been left out of and not been included in any negotiations. It's sort of been sidelined, as Councillor Blaney said earlier on. The question that we were going to put to is, where do we see the role of this committee, and is it viable? Is this committee still viable? And do we see our role? And I know it's been sort of maybe previously discussed today already, and by a number of people, that I think it does still have an important part to play, and I think it's up to us now to make sure that we do play that part and put pressure on to be part of any negotiations that's happening at council level. Patsy, will you make sure that maybe make correspondence to the department in relation to that on behalf of this committee? And there's a couple of people just want to come on, and I would ask you to please be quickly, because I do want to get read up here this evening. Now it's nearly 6 o'clock. First was Councillor McBrearty, then Councillor Blaney.
Well, I would just concur with yourself, Chairman, and I would say this should be a committee to scrutinise the IS 465 and SI 25 until whatever time government has the courage to take the stance and abolish both of them and give people 100% redress. I feel that the participation today was constructive because of the way the meeting has been chaired, without people being muted in the wrong. And I have to say this, that accountability is what this committee should be holding to government. They should be holding government to account, no matter what party's in government. If say, for example, and don't take this as a criticism, if Sinn Féin went into government in the morning, they'd be held accountable too. The same as we're trying to hold Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party accountable. And that is what this committee should be about, scrutinising and holding people to account with proper information, and educate the public on what is actually wrong in this crisis. So thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Blaney.
Very briefly, just Chair, I want to propose again, and I hope I do get a second for this, that this committee, not us as county councillors, this Mica Redress Committee gets statutory powers our statutory rights recognised by the department for the length of time that is going to be required, for the length of time that Mica is going to be in our county, and that other counties that has defective blocks, that they are allowed the same rights as we are. It's not about us. It's not about this committee. That will change again in a couple of years' time. There'll be others. Different members on, maybe different members on before the next council election. But I think the committee itself is very important that it gets statutory powers. And I think it's one of the main requests that we should be making to the department, and ensure that we do relay the people that is affected by this blight, their fears and their concerns to the people in power. I think it's very important that they hear from ourselves as elected representatives who is representing them people. Thank you for the way you've conducted the meeting too, Chair. It was a very, very constructive meeting. The first in a while, but thankfully things have settled down, and hopefully this is the way, as I said earlier, that we'll be able to conduct all our meetings, not just our Mica meetings, but all our meetings, because when meetings go on, it takes 3 or 4 days to complete. That's not nobody's best interest. And I think if we can work now in harmony together from today on, and all our meetings, whether they're committee meetings or full council meetings, I think will be the best for ourselves as elected representatives and for the people of the county. Thanks, Chair.
I'll take Councillor McBrearty. Councillor Farn.
I'll second that proposal, Chairman.
That's right. Frank second that proposal, but I do think very constructive meeting here today. A lot of good suggestions made there today, and certainly from today on, I think that this committee, with yourself and Albert representing us, no more meetings without you two people being present and feeding back to yourselves actually what's happening and taking our concerns to the department as well. Very good meeting here today. I want to congratulate you on it, Chair. There's some good people on there. Looked at it like Paul Canning. He's an architect there. He's in the game. Frank, in fairness to him, has come in there with a lot of stuff there today, and I want to pay tribute to the Donegal County Council as well, the work that they're doing there as well. Tremendous work. So it's been a whole team effort, a very good meeting. It's one of the first I've been at now for a while that this will be very constructive, and I really do hope that we can move forward from here on. And I want to reiterate, or just echo what Councillor Bamey said there. I would like to see our full council meetings go down the same route now. Maybe Monday, or maybe that can happen. And people can sometimes we get a wee bit uptight and things like that there, and things can happen. But I think for everybody's sake, we should be getting our meetings finished in one day and those type of things, because as you know yourselves, the type of jobs we're talking here about Mica now at the moment, and we have roads issues, housing issues, water issues, planning issues, just everything, as a job as a council, and that's a job we signed up to do. So, when you're out on the ground, and you have to be getting on with the work as well. But no, congratulations to yourself, Chair, there today. Very well handled today, and hope all the meetings go the same way now from now on. Thank you.
Councillor Doherty, Councillor Crossan, you want to make a comment? All right, Councillor Crossan, Councillor Doherty.
Chairman, just one point. We need to stop calling this Mica. It's Deleterious materials and sulphide minerals. And I would request and make that proposal, stop calling this Mica, because that's the stick we've been beat with, is Mica. It's Deleterious materials and sulphide minerals. And I'd ask somebody to second that proposal, because it's not Mica.
Councillor Binney, seconded. Okay.
Oh, Chair, I think we've learned that there are many aspects in relation to addressing the defective blocks, and perhaps if there's members present who would like to submit something to Patsy that we can explore and consider at our next meeting. But I think the remit means, what are we about? We're about Mica. Well, we're about defective blocks and how they become defective, and so long as that exists in the community, I think it's important that there's a committee to work on it for the general public and to work with the officials. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Patsy?
Chair, just a point of clarification more for myself than anything else. And in relation to, I suppose there's one question that I have. Obviously, we'll be relaying to the department the requirement of or the decision of the meeting for the chair and vice chair to attend meetings with officials in relation to, I suppose, the broader questions going forward in relation to the development of the new scheme, issues about the protocol as it is and so forth, and raising the fears and concerns that people have. I suppose what I'm conscious of as well, Chair, is we would sort of have ongoing communications regularly with the department in relation to individual type cases, and I'm conscious of the particular, say the current situation where we have cases we can't get over the line in line with the current regulations, and it might be helpful that we could still continue those sort of offline, so to speak, but we would deal with the bigger picture issues along with the chair and vice chair. I just wanted to be clear on that, so there's no crossed wires. There's day-to-day issues that we probably need to move on as well, you know.
Absolutely, that's fine. But Patsy, we would like the opportunity this side of Christmas, if possible, to have the meeting with the department, with yourselves and with Councillor myself and Councillor Nardi. You know, like if it could happen prior to Christmas. I know the time is tight now, but I mean, if it could, we would like that to happen.
That's okay. Yeah. Thanks for that.
And just before I finish, the one thing, maybe Patsy and John, you could give us one clarification. I think this meeting has been very important today, and it has given a lot of clarity, and we've had a good discussion. And I think we'll have another one, you know, come now mid-January when we come back, so that again we can delve. Maybe we might know some details or some more details by that stage. And hopefully myself and Councillor Doherty will have met with yourselves and the department at that stage to bring back what we can bring back to the rest of the committee here. But I think leaving this meeting today, I think it's important that we have you know, what we're saying in relation to applications and where we sit from the council. Are we saying that the applications, there'll be no applications going through the council until there's clear clarification from the department, and you know, is that going to be like after this new legislation comes in, or is that going to be early in the new year? I think we need to let people know that's out there at the minute, and I'm going to go back over old ground again, because my heart has been broke over the last number of weeks, along with every other councillor, from people asking, when am I going to get my money back? When is my application going to get through? And I think, again, I'm going to stress the importance of us as a local authority being straight and honest with the general public who are going through enough stress at the minute to say, look, this is the situation, this is what's happening, and I would like that clarified, please.
Yeah, well, on that, Martin, I suppose it is clear at the minute there's a significant number of applications that that we're unable to make a decision on at the minute based on the criteria that we have to apply. And those are the sort of case studies that we would probably want to bring to the department on an individual basis to try and move those on, separate from the bigger picture, broader issues that I would see that, you know, as a broader group we would be sitting down on. So it's to separate out the individual cases with the broader concepts, even though there would be an overlap. But at this point in time, John, and you can clarify it, but the majority of the applications that we have sitting based on the test results and so forth that's in, and to apply the current regs and protocol, we do have a difficulty. We can't see those being approved in the short term. But we'll be exploring those with the department, even taking case studies and try and work the way through it as to how we can actually deal with them, and can we get approval or some sort of guidance to move some of them on.
Chairman, I don't want to interrupt, but I just need to make a point now that Patsy has made there, and the point is, sulphide minerals, if you are not included in IS 465 or the statutory instrument 25, and that does not allow local authorities that are in this scheme administrating it to allow people whose test results show sulphide minerals at the level above 0.1%. That's the clear law on it. And that is the failure of this whole scheme, full stop. And it goes back to the core issue. Why was this done? It was done because they couldn't create a standard and a statutory instrument on the existing legislation that we're governed on through the European Union and through the Irish standard itself. They went out and created one so they could create a scheme, a grant scheme, so that they could curtail people with properties that are affected with sulphide minerals. And that's the reality of this. People who have sulphide minerals identified in test suite B, but not the actual percentage, only identified as an abundance, cannot avail from the scheme. And all these properties in Donegal that are coming from the same manufacturer as my father's and my cousins cannot get into the scheme for full demolition because of the way the scheme has been designed under IS 465.
Thanks. Very Councillor Meeting.
Sorry, Chair. One thing I'd just like to say is, John said something earlier on there, and I think it was along the lines of he would like to see IS 465 done away with. His Engineers Ireland that represents him has said that. I think John believes that. If I'm wrong on that, John, correct me please. But I think that is alarming. It's very, very, it's one of the most alarming things that's come out of this meeting. To hear that an engineer with John's experience and the representative organisation for the engineers is recommending that the scheme be done away with that we're working under. Plus, what Councillor McBrearty said about the sulphides, you know, and he's 100% correct on that. And some of us have known it for quite some time, but AS 465 has been there and there's nothing can be done about it till now. And hopefully after this meeting today, that this will make a ring alarm bells out there. That's if I'm right in what I'm saying, and that may be done away with sooner than maybe what we would.
Thanks, Chairman. I think just to clarify what I was saying there was that I mentioned it in the document that we put up on the screen. I would like to see IS 465 revised, reviewed, revised, modernised, take into account all of the information that's available now, including all the information about sulphide minerals, and bring it up to date and bring it forward as an actual working document. Apologise, Councillor Brady, I'm not looking for it to be removed or disregarded. I'll be looking to see it updated, revised, modernised in the line of the current thinking. And I think Engineers Ireland would be in the same space as well. The standard would have been developed in 2017 and 2018. There's been a lot of work done in this county since that. There's been 600 applications have come in. All have been sampled, tested, laboratory analysis, geologist reports. There's a serious amount of information available now over and above what was there in 2018. And if I could just, if it's okay, Councillor Blaney, I would like to see all that brought into a modernisation, because I think there was good work done in 465 as well. But I think I would like to see it now being progressed up to modern thinking.
Apologies,
Chairman, I have to disagree with John on that aspect. Sorry.
I just want to thank John for clarifying that, because I didn't want to be quoted in something that I didn't say. But I think it's very important that information was out there, what John is saying, and it be updated. So, you know, I think the quicker that can happen, the better. Thanks, Chair.
Chairman, I'm not being critical of John, by the way, right? I want to say I have to disagree, because the standard has already been there before they created IS 465. They should have created the statutory instrument round the standard that was in place, not go and create one for mica, free muscovite mica and reactive pyrite, because they knew that the biggest problem that was going to happen in Donegal and Mayo because pyrite is a sister of pyrrhotite. They knew that that was going to be the problem at some stage, and they should create now a new statutory instrument grant scheme around the existing EU legislation that has been there since 2002 and beforehand. The standard was stronger beforehand, and I'm doing research on that at the minute on what the standard was, and I'll have it all ready very shortly. So IS 465 needs to go.
Thank you, Councillor McBrearty.
Yeah.
Councillor Kenny.
No, first of all, well done on the meeting. Secondly, where in relation to getting a set of teeth for this meeting or this committee regarding the a statutory grip or whatever, what is our next move in relation to that? How do we go about that? Do we have to do up a constitution, etc., and voting rights, etc., etc.? Who's going to take that on their plate rather than us come back next meeting and have the same conversation? So I think that's paramount that we get that done, and the quicker we get that done, the better, because at the minute we don't want to be just a talking shop.
Yep.
Thanks, Jim.
That's good. Patsy, can you answer that?
I would need to check that, Martin. I wouldn't be familiar with what the members are saying primarily is that the views of the committee are listened to, as opposed to what maybe the status of the committee is. But I'm happy to explore that and check it.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair, I think to make it a statutory committee, I think the department has to agree. It's like any other committees that we have here, that housing committee or them kind of committees. I think it has to be set up and agreed by the department. But look, we'll let Patsy come back to us and we'll revise it, what exactly the protocol is on. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, guys. It's now 6:10, and I know we run on about this evening, but I think it's important that everybody gets their chance to make their points here, because everybody here is here for the one reason, and that's to get this awful situation sorted out here. And everybody's entitled to put their points out there, and I think that's the way we have to do this to make it work. And I just wanted to thank again John, Patsy, Patricia, Siobhan, and all the team there for the work that they're doing. And if you can maybe Patsy liaise with myself and Councillor Doherty in relation to when we can have a meeting. And I think we'll try and aim to have a meeting again in the second or third week of January, if that's all right, Patsy. If you can maybe pencil that in for January, that we could meet in the second or third week of January. And then that'll be prior to the February things that's going to happen. At least we would have hopefully a meeting with the department over at that stage, and we can update the members and we can get some of the points that we discussed today. So again, thanks guys, thanks very much for today. Thank you.
Thank you.